Hello and welcome. I am Kim Keen, host of the One of a Kind You podcast. I started this podcast to share my journey of my past self, a woman who was struggling with leaving her teaching career and adjusting to stay-at-home mom life, to help other women with their motherhood journeys or their work-life balance journeys so they can let go and make themselves a priority without all the sacrificing. So thank you so much for taking the time to tune into this episode. If you're a regular listener, I'm excited that you're here again. If you're new, thank you so much for taking the time to stop and check it out to see what One of a Kind You is all about. I'm so grateful for your time. And the way that this podcast usually works is that I share a journal entry of mine from about 5 or 6 years ago when I was in the thick of the struggle, and I reflect on what I know now as a certified life coach and what I wish I had known then. But today, ladies, we are in for a special treat. We actually have a guest, so you don't have to listen to me blab on alone. We have Alison with us, and she is going to chat with us today about midlife and menopause. And it makes me cringe because I'm closer to midlife than menopause than I'd like to admit. I just turned 40, and so now I'm like, it's on my mind. And I've been trying to not have it be on my mind, but avoiding it is not going to prevent it from coming or happening. So it's better to be prepared and aware and actually know what's going to go on so that we can manage it better. So I thought she would be the perfect guest to have on One of a Kind You. And her journey really started back in her teen years when she had hormonal skin problems. And so that led her to working as an esthetician and helping women with their skin as they are going through menopause and having acne and pigmentation. So she is all about women's health, which amen to that. We need more advocates for women's health. So I'm going to turn it over to her and I'm going to let her tell us more about herself. So thank you, Alison, for so much for joining us on One of a Kind You.
Oh, thank you, Kim, for that lovely introduction. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here talking about perimenopause and menopause, because it really is a very, very important subject, and a subject really that we don't talk about enough, and because it's a process that every single woman will go through.
Yes.
It's a totally natural process. But yeah, as you said, my name's Alison, and I'm a registered nutritional therapist, and as you said, I started my career as an esthetician, working specifically with women's skin problems, because we always assume that when we go through puberty, some people can develop acne like I did, and it was hormonal, and I really didn't get the help and the support that I needed then. And I managed, I saw so many other women suffering with skin issues and generally hormonal issues. So after, it didn't take me very long to realize that working as an esthetician is great, but you also need to work from the inside. It's the whole picture. It's not just about applying products. It's about working from the inside with the gut and nutrition. So that's when I went back and studied nutritional therapy at university. And ever since then, I've been working globally, helping women to, helping and supporting women to get through this sometimes difficult period in their lives. I like to say I help women harness the hormones and get back their sparkle.
Oh, I
Because,
love it. Harness the
yeah,
hormone to get back the sparkle. Yes. Who doesn't want to sparkle? I mean, I
exactly. We all like a bit of sparkle, don't we?
yes.
Yeah, so I work very closely. I do one-to-one programs with my clients, and it's very individually tailored depending on what you need, because it's such a huge subject, menopause, and you really need to get to the bottom of the root cause, and what's happening, why are you getting all these symptoms, etc. So I'm very passionate, because I think that women, as we get older, we should be celebrated rather than feeling that, oh, now I'm going through menopause, and that I'm not fertile anymore. And it's a bit of a taboo subject. I remember the women in my family when I was growing up, my mother and my grandmother, they wouldn't talk about it. And I could see that my mum was suffering from hot flushes and weight gain, etc. But she just wouldn't talk. It was kind of there was a bit of a stigma attached to it. It's as if it wasn't, you just didn't talk about things like that. You just basically got on with it. Whereas now there still is, we need to talk about it more, but there still is that stigma attached to it that, isn't something that we should celebrate. It's more of a kind of like an ending, which
Yes.
is totally wrong. I mean, as women get older, we're so wise, aren't we?
Yes.
we have so much knowledge, and when you go through menopause, you can have up to 30, 35 years left of your life. So
Yeah,
you
which
should
is
be
a long
embracing
time.
it.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah. It's you bring up such a valid point though, and I think this is the thing that I was like, oh, this is why we need to have this episode, is because we have to talk about it. So I did not have acne as a teen. I was very, very lucky. I would only get one pimple on my chin when it was my cycle. My cycle would end, the pimple would be gone, and no one even knew it was there. But I got acne after I had, like, during my pregnancies with my daughters, and then still after I had them. So I always felt kind of defective because I never had that beautiful glow, like that pregnancy glow. I always had the pizza face chin, and I had this horrible acne on my back. And so after my kids were born, and Casey, my younger, was 2, so Lily was 5, I still had it. And I just couldn't get rid of it. So then I went on a medication called spironolactone, but you had to go for liver checks. You couldn't have children when you were on that. And so I was on that for almost 2 years. And then I had the glow. My skin was perfectly clear. But then I thought, I don't want to be on this if I have to go for liver checks. Like, that clearly can't be a good thing. So then I came off of it, and boom, the acne was back again. And the doctor was basically like, well, it's hormonal. So you just basically have to deal with this until the hormones shift again. And I was like, well, when is that going to be? That could be 15 years. Who knows? So, yeah, so it's so fascinating where you think like, oh, I'm not going to have acne because I didn't have it as a teen. And then we go through these different stages of life. And then you're like, oh, there it is. Thanks a lot, hormones.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks a lot. I mean, it's not exactly what you need when you're coming into, midlife and menopause, because you've got so many other things going on. As you come into perimenopause, which is the first stage, and that on average can start around 45, but it absolutely can start earlier. So it's very individual. And you've got children maybe at home, you've got a career, you've got so many things going on that your life is most probably quite stressful, and then you develop acne. I mean, it just becomes overwhelming. It can really be very, very stressful. But I think that the important thing is knowing. I know that a lot of your listeners aren't, they're not at maybe the menopausal age yet, but it's very good to know what is going to be happening when you get into your mid 40s, because then when you have, or you develop some of the symptoms like hot flushes or weight gain or whatever it is, then you understand, rather than just being, oh, what is going on with my body? Because that's a real key thing, that a lot of people, when they come into perimenopause, they don't actually realize that it is perimenopause. They just think that they're going mad, or that it's due to stress, or something else in their lifestyle, because there are so many things that you can do to support yourself and really make yourself feel better in this time period.
Yeah, and I think, first of all, I we don't use the term perimenopause very often. It's just menopause. Like, you just hit menopause and that's it. There's really nothing, before that. And so I think we're blindsided, and then we chalk it up to stress or being overwhelmed with, working and taking care of kids and all the after school activities and this, that, and the other. And then we think like, oh, I'm gaining weight. Oh, because I haven't been maybe as mindful about my diet as I was. And then we go into this diet mode, but then nothing is working to take the weight off. And then we feel even worse about ourselves. So then we create so much resistance. So what would be one of the first signs that you are actually hitting perimenopause? Or there are lots of signs?
There are a lot, but there's the ones that are very, I mean, every woman's experience of perimenopause is different. But the one thing that most women, not every woman, but most women suffer from, is the hot flashes. So, all of a sudden, due to the hormone imbalances, because during perimenopause, your hormones, they're really on a bit of a roller coaster. So, 1 month your estrogen can be high, your progesterone can be low, and then the following month it can be all over the place, and this can trigger off the symptoms. And the one of the most common is hot flashes. Brain fog is very common, that you all of a sudden start just forgetting things, or you're in the middle of a sentence and you can't remember what you were talking about. I mean, I'm in perimenopause myself, and that happens to me that all of a sudden you just go blank.
It's almost like pregnancy brain all over again.
Yeah, yeah, it's all to do with hormones, and I would say the main things that you can detect that you maybe are in perimenopause is, like we say, the hot flashes, maybe a little bit of weight gain. It's predominantly around the abdomen area for no particular reason, that you're eating the same and everything. Like we say, brain fog, uh, irritation, mood swings. All of a sudden, you feel very like irritated over very minor things that you wouldn't be irritated over before. So understanding that it's due to your hormones, I think, makes you feel a little bit better. And also from your family's point of view, they all of a sudden think, why is mum so moody, or why is she so irritated all the time? I think it's good that the whole family's on board and understands what this is and what's going on.
Yeah, and it's kind of that validation, like, okay, I'm really not losing my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, okay, I get it now. It makes so much sense. Are the symptoms of perimenopause the same as actual menopause?
What happens is on average it's 45 when you start perimenopause, but like I said, it absolutely can come earlier. And then on average you have that for roughly about till the age of about 51, 52. And then when you go into menopause, basically what menopause is, and the term menopause means that you're not menstruating anymore. So when you've gone through perimenopause and you haven't had a period for a year in a row, you are then in menopause. But
Okay.
so if you've, for example, 8 months and you haven't ovulated, and then you have a period, you're still in perimenopause.
Okay.
And then, so menopause, you've stopped ovulating, you're not fertile any longer. And then all the time after that is what we call postmenopause. So that is where you're not producing eggs anymore, and your estrogen levels. Your body does actually produce a very small amount of estrogen from your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys. But your estrogen levels are very low. So they're basically the three stages. So the difference between perimenopause is, that the symptoms tend to really come and in waves, and you can have the hot flashes and weight gain, and hopefully it's not always the case, but as you come into menopause and postmenopause, things tend to get a little bit better and they just gradually lessen. But I mean, you can have menopausal symptoms for many years, even into post menopause. But it
Mhm.
also depends on what you're doing and your lifestyle, and whether you're taking hormone replacement therapy. There's lots of different things that can really help with that.
I think as we're talking, I'm like, oh, I think we actually just call the whole thing menopause, because I know that there are women in my family who are still ovulating, but they're like, oh, I'm in menopause. So now I'm like, oh no, they're actually in perimenopause because you're still having a period. So you're actually not in menopause yet. So I think that's the other thing, is that we don't even use the terms correctly.
No,
Like, it's just a menopause. That's it, menopause.
it's so true. And I mean, there's so many women that don't really understand. And it's amazing, isn't it? If you think
Yeah.
like the hormonal, the big hormonal events in a woman's life is like puberty, pregnancy, that we understand relatively well. But when it comes to this like menopause, perimenopause area that happens later in life, there's so many of us that really don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, well, because we don't talk about it, because I think there's this stigma about aging. So it's like the last thing we want to do is hit menopause, because then like we're perceived to be like these, washed up, dried up old prunes who, just sweat and are miserable all the time. And it's like no one wants to sign up for that. So it's almost like if we don't talk about it, then it's not going to happen. It won't come. And we don't have to, we can just pretend it away, and then it comes and we're blindsided and we're not prepared, and then we don't know what to do, and we're scrambling for information. I think a lot of times we even get conflicting information about all of it, because we don't even, we don't want to bring it up necessarily at the doctors, because it's embarrassing to say like, oh, I think I'm in menopause. No one wants
Mm.
to say it.
No, exactly. And the whole, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Europe at the moment, there's a bit of a menopause revolution going on because women are just fed up with not getting the support and the information that they need. And I mean,
Yeah.
it still needs to be talked about a lot more, but it is happening. There's kind of, women are saying, no, I'll go to my doctor and I want the support. I'm
Yes.
not just being fobbed off and saying, oh, it's just the time of your life. You're going through menopause. You want the support and you want a knowledgeable person there to give you the correct information.
Yes, and it's the same here in the US. I think women, we've had enough of being looked at as in like a subservient way, or not being supportive when we need these life changes, go through these life changes. So I would say that we're taking a stand here in this country as well, and like demanding that we have accurate information, and that it's done in a holistic way, because I think that for so long it's been men who have been physicians, and they look at our bodies more from a mechanical perspective and not so much from a holistic perspective. And so it's just about like, how does the body function, but not the emotional aspect, the mental health aspect. It's just like that one physical piece. And so we're saying, no, we're a whole person and you're going to treat us as such. And we want information that validates that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Well said. It's
Yeah.
totally true. And the research that is done on menopause and all the different treatments that can be given for menopause is lacking because
Yes.
research in general is predominantly done on men. I mean, it's getting better, but there isn't enough research done, and there's certainly not enough research done on women and hormones and all the different aspects of that. So it's something that really needs to be increased, the research, and to actually have the evidence and the facts there. Because I mean, I work with evidence-based information. Everything that I say is comes from research and facts, because there is so much misinformation out there, and I totally understand how women can be confused because it's just so conflicting, the information that you can find.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, if you take birth control pills, it will help you through menopause. Oh, no, because that increases the risk of this, or oh, so there's so many different things, and it's hard to decipher what's true and what's not true, and where to even go for true information. So I really appreciate that you actually take the time to use research-based information with your clients.
No, all is, and there's so much. I mean, I find it fascinating as well. There's so much new research coming out all the time. What we thought 10, 20 years ago isn't necessarily the case now. I mean, in nutrition in general,
Hmm.
it's a huge area, and we think we understand it, but I don't think we really do totally. I mean, if you think, a great example was, it was in the 70s, wasn't it, that everyone decided that it wasn't such a good idea to eat fat. So
Hmm.
everything should be low fat, high carb, laden with sugar. And I mean, when you look at the figures now of the obesity from the 70s to when we started eating, sugary refined foods, I mean, there's an virtually obesity epidemic in the
Yes.
world. So
Yes.
now we've suddenly decided, oh, actually, well, hold on a minute. Fat was all right. Fat, we should be eating fat, and sugar's not good. So we've kind of changed all that around. So it's just keeping up with the latest information.
Mhm.
We need research to understand, and eating healthy fats, not all fats, but things like olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, all those wonderful fats. It's actually really good for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like we don't even always understand like good fat versus bad fat, good cholesterol versus bad cholesterol. And so, we really need someone there that knows, like you as a nutritionist, that can really break it down for us. So, is there foods that we can eat that would help with perimenopause symptoms? Um, like certain vitamins, because then like when you're pregnant you have to take a certain vitamin, and I'm drawing a blank on what it is now. um it'll come to me at some point, not important.
Is it folic acid?
Yes, that's it,
Yeah.
folic acid. So is that the same for when you hit perimenopause? Do you take folic acid again or not so much?
Yeah, again, it's very individual with supplementation. I mean, when I work with clients, if I feel that's necessary, I feel there's maybe a deficiency, then we would look at that and maybe do testing to actually find out, because just taking supplements because you've read somewhere that that's good for that, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And you should always really try and get your nutrients and everything from real food.
Hmm.
But as far as supplementation go, and the things that you need in perimenopause, iron can be quite a big thing, because one of the symptoms of perimenopause is that you can have quite heavy bleeding.
Hmm.
You can have your periods all of a sudden can just go haywire, and you can maybe have like 2 periods in a month, and then not one for 2 months, but you can really bleed heavily. So you have to be mindful of your iron levels, because that obviously, if you're having heavy periods, you can be low in iron.
Hmm.
But it's about balance, and it's about eating, avoiding, the things that, and this has been shown in research, that trigger, for example, hot flushes is your sugary processed foods. Alcohol is been shown, if you like your glass of wine in the evening, that can trigger a hot flash, and it can also stop you from sleeping, because sleep can be a big issue during perimenopause and menopause. So it's more getting rid of all, like, the processed refined foods that seem to be everywhere. I
Hmm.
mean, I like to call them more toxic foods, that everywhere you go,
Yes.
like the food environment is everywhere, isn't it? Even not even in a food store, if you're just going to buy something from a DIY shop, you've got laden there as you're in the checkout with all sugary sweet foods. And I appreciate it's not easy, is it? We're only human, and we
Right.
like those sort of foods, but it's really trying to just be mindful and reducing processed sugary foods and drinks, because they will make your menopausal symptoms worse.
Hmm. So, and then also I would assume that part of it's a holistic approach. So it's diet. So really working to eliminate or reduce as much as possible those sugary processed foods. And then also I would assume stress management too, because that what I would assume would could also be a trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, stress is a huge part in my programs, because the majority of women in midlife are normally quite stressed. I mean, we suffer. Everybody seems to be stressed. We're
Mhm.
suffering from, like, chronic stress because of our lifestyles and everything. But stress is huge, because stress just triggers off so many different processes in the body due to the stress hormones. And if you've noticed that you're starting to put a little bit of weight on, the first thing that you really need to do before you even think about what you're eating is to manage stress, because cortisol, which is one of the stress hormones, is actually a fat storing hormone. So if you're chronically stressed and have levels of cortisol in your blood, you will find it really difficult to lose weight.
Mhm.
And it's just this, it's so bad for your stress. It affects your sleep, it affects your mood, it affects all, like, what you eat and how your body stores it, blood sugar levels. And it's all very well, isn't it, saying to someone, okay, manage your stress, but
Yes.
someone that's really stressed, if I say, okay, now let's do an hour of meditation and an hour of yoga every day, I mean, you're going to find that stressful in itself, trying to do that. So just trying to find something that works for you, even if it's just 5 minutes a day.
Mhm.
Just, one thing that is really underestimated is breathing.
Yes.
Breathe deeply. That is such a good thing for stress. Going for a walk, just sitting and looking out the window and breathing. And it doesn't have to be like an hour of your time. I think if you do small things daily, then it leads to big results.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And the you all if you have an Apple Watch or a watch connected to your smartphone, you get reminders all the time about mindfulness. So it's like you get the little alert like take 2 minutes to be mindful, and it does a little countdown timer. And even if you only just did half of that, would be better than doing nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really is, and it is so, so important for health in general, but just especially when you come into perimenopause and menopause, because you know, you just get into this like vicious circle of stress, and it stops you sleeping, and you know, you just can end up feeling terrible. And we all have to prioritize our health, and
Mhm.
just giving, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day, you are actually worth that. So
Oh,
you know,
yes.
you can't carry on saying to yourself, oh, I don't have time, I don't have time, because you'll just end up having to make time when you get really ill, because you
Mhm.
won't be able to work.
Yeah, then you have no choice. Then you'll have
Mm.
the time. But it's
Yeah,
not, you don't wanna get to that point, because sometimes then it's not that you're too far gone, but it's harder to get out of that because then you're really far down in the ditch, and it's a longer journey to climb out of that. So it's better to be proactive about it and do it now while you're in a healthy state than rather trying to go, into overdrive and get out of it.
yeah, absolutely. I like to I always have Sundays is like my day where I do things that I want to do, self-care, you know, being with your family, cooking, whatever you enjoy doing, and not working, because it's so easy, isn't it, to just read a few emails or do that. Really mindfully not doing anything, and trying to stay off all devices. And it's so it fascinates me actually how good you feel after a day of no computers, no phones, nothing. It actually makes you feel wonderful. I know some friends of mine, when they go away with their families, they go away and they're not allowed to bring any phones or anything, so that they just have time. They rent a house in the north of Sweden, and they just have time together, and they play board games and talk, and there's absolutely no technology. And
Yeah,
they
I
say
love that.
it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's we're all so connected to our devices, whether it's the phone or the laptop or the iPad or the tablet, whatever. And so, it's going to feel awkward and uncomfortable to disconnect from that. So, even if you just set the rule for yourself on Sunday is the device free
Mhm.
day, and build up to having a whole day of no device. So it might be, no devices until 10 a.m. on Sunday. And then once you can do that comfortably and think, okay, no big deal, I got this, then it's no devices until noon, and then 3, and then before you know it, you're going to be without a device all day on Sunday. And I know when I take those days where I don't get on social media, I don't open the laptop, it gets really hard to get back into those things, especially
Mhm.
the social media piece. Cause I'm like, I feel so much lighter, so much more energized. I don't feel weighted down. But subconsciously you get into the comparison trap on social media. And so it's so freeing to not be connected to that.
Yeah, it really is. I agree with you totally. I feel exactly the same way. And you know, it's amazing, and it absolutely has its place. But I think you just have to be mindful that your whole day isn't absorbed by devices, because it doesn't make you feel good.
Yes.
Mentally, it isn't good for you.
Yes, and so for my own self, I'm not allowed to check email because some people. It used to be that I would literally, the alarm would go off, I would open my eyes and I'd scroll my email. But now I don't allow myself to do that until after I've eaten breakfast. So I've meditated for the morning, I've done my morning journaling exercises, I've eaten breakfast, I've showered, and then I can check the email. But I'm not like, I don't allow myself to do it until after that point, because it was stressful starting my day. Because if you get this unexpected email from, a teacher at school about your child not making a good choice or whatever, then it sets your day for to be stressed out. So then you take that all day long with you, and maybe into the next day and the day after that. So once you can get up and get in the right mindset and start your day in a way that you want, then it's easier to navigate the unexpected emails or the unexpected social media comments or posts or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it's so true. I think mindset, as you said, Kim, is so important. And that, talking about perimenopause and menopause, that's an area that I really work with clients. Is, you know, how, if you go into this time in your life with it's difficult, because there's always, when we talk about menopause, perimenopause, menopause, we always talk about the negative sides
Mhm.
of it, don't we? You know, all the symptoms, and you're going to put weight on, and you're going to feel terrible, and you're not going to remember anything. You never look at the positive sides. And it's actually really interesting, because it's been shown that societies where women are celebrated. It's not so much in the Western world, but when they're celebrated, when they come into this phase in their life, they don't have as many symptoms. They tend to glide through menopause. Whereas when we look at it as, something, it's the end, and you're not fertile anymore, that women struggle. So having the mindset and embracing it with a positive attitude will actually help you a lot.
I think that's so interesting that cultures where women are celebrated for entering that phase of life, they actually go through it with more ease. And I think that's a revolution that needs to be started in the Western world, is that we need to be celebrating women for entering that phase of life, because we have a lot of experience, we have a lot of wisdom, and we have a lot of insight. And so at that, when we're in that phase of life, we're taking on new tasks to help our children, their children, and future generations, but our community as a whole. And so I think if we look at each other and celebrate that, then it will just be for the best, rather than looking at us like we're old and washed up.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, these women, that they're celebrated, and they're appreciated for their wiseness. So they're normally, quite high up in the level of people. They run the village, and they really help with everything. And one thing that I always find very interesting is, killer whales. There aren't many mammals that actually go through menopause, but killer whales is one of them.
Really?
When the female becomes around, because they live till they're quite old, around 45, they actually go through a menopause. And when they've gone through that, they then become the leader of the pod. The pod of, I mean, they can have up to 30, 40 whales in a pod, because of their knowledge, because they know where everything is. And so they lead the whole group of whales after menopause. So that's
I
really
love
a
it.
thing. Yeah.
That's it. We're going to all take on the philosophy of killer whales, and that's going to be that's it. We're going to be killer whales. I love it.
Yeah, I just think women should be celebrated for our knowledge, and we're such caring people, aren't we? We always look after everybody. When you go through perimenopause and menopause, it's also a time in your life where you can, go and do what you want to do.
Mhm.
Maybe your children have become older and they've left home, so you've got more time. Do things, be a bit wild and crazy. Go and learn something, or go on a trip, or you know do things. I'm a great one of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, because a lot of women as well, they which is one of the symptoms of menopause, is that you suddenly start to lack confidence.
Mhm.
And it's all hormone related, and you start to really question yourself and everything. But if you do small things that kind of make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, that really helps to boost your confidence.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful, way to step forward into that phase of life. Because I think, um, I don't know if you relate to this, but I feel like at each stage of life, we almost lose ourselves as women. So, like, when we have children, then we lose ourselves as like just being a mom. And then when our kids start to get a little bit older and they don't need us as much anymore because they're, independent in, fourth grade, fifth grade, middle school, high school, then we think, oh my gosh, I'm not needed. Now what? Now who am I? Now what am I going to do? And then we have these sort of, we're not quite at midlife. So it's like more of like a quarter life crisis. And because we've poured so much of ourselves into being a mom, that identity falls away. And then we're kind of like, oh gosh, I don't know. And then we feel like we maybe kind of get it figured out, or we get to the point where we don't really care what people think of us as much. We feel more comfortable in our own skin. And just when we embrace that, then here comes perimenopause and menopause and empty nest syndrome. And we think, oh God, I got to figure it out all over again. And I think sometimes can get stuck in the not knowing. So I think it's fantastic to say, oh my gosh, this is great. I have the freedom of time, energy, mental capacity, whatever, to go be, do, have, see, feel, whatever it is that I want, and just go do it.
Yeah, exactly. Just go and do it. Don't overanalyze it. Just go and do it.
Yeah.
And it will make you feel fantastic. If you do something that you maybe have thought about, but you think, I don't know, if I can do that, or I'm not sure, just go and try. Just go and try and do it, because there's so many statistics of women, older women, that they start a business when they're 60. That
Hmm.
they go and learn to fly when they're 65. There was a thing actually on the news here the other day. I think she was a 95-year-old lady that had just done a wing walk. So she'd gone up on a plane and then walked out. You can do where you walk out on the
Yes.
wing flying. And she was 95. She loved it.
Wow. I don't think now at 40 I would do a wing walk, and I don't think at 95 I would do a wing walk. So more power to her, but I love it. I love that at 95 she's still showing up for herself and giving her the space to try something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be as crazy as that. It can just be a something that you wanted to do, to go and learn another language, or learn to crochet, or it can be anything. It doesn't have to be anything so drastic.
Yeah. There's a mom that I just interviewed. Her she's starting a kids clothing line. So
Mm.
and she had very bad postpartum with maybe her fifth baby. So she has five children. I don't remember if it was the fourth child or the fifth child, but it was really not great. And so I just saw a post of hers on Instagram that she went roller skating
Ah.
because that was something that she loved to do as a kid. And she was like, I think I'm going to go roller skating. And she just went roller skating in her neighborhood, and she loved every second of it. And she showed a video of her feet zipping along on the ground. I was like, oh my God, I love roller skating. Now I want to go roller skating. But it can be something fun like that. Or like you said, it could be something like crocheting, or taking a scrapbooking class. I mean, there's so many different things out there for us to try. And we just need to give ourselves permission to do it.
Yeah, and I think once you've done it, you then feel so much better, because it is a real confidence boost. A lot of
Yeah.
people write a book. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything serious, but they just write something down, start learning to write a book, or whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, I love it. So as we age and we start to get into that, we're like, oh gosh, it's perimenopause. What is something that we can do? I guess it would be reduce your processed sugars, like reduce processed food, refined sugars, minimize them as much as possible. Really start working on stress management to reduce the stress that we have in our life, whether that's mostly with breath work, but taking a walk, um, giving ourselves permission to try new things. Is there anything else that we can take away as like a starting point, even now if we're not in perimenopause, to sort of prepare ourselves for that time?
Yeah, there's so there's so many things that you can do, but I think one thing that is the what you eat obviously is very important. So try and take out the non-nutritious foods, like all your processed foods. Anything that comes in a packet that has more than two or three ingredients isn't going to necessarily be very beneficial for you. And add nutritious foods. Research suggests that the Mediterranean style diet is one of the diets that is beneficial for overall health and for menopausal health. And people say, well, what does that mean, Mediterranean diet? But it's basically eating whole foods,
Hmm.
things like fish, your white meats, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, legumes, and then all your lovely healthy fats like your avocado, olive oil, etc. And really just think about eating a balanced plate, with protein, fat, and whole grain carbohydrates. And protein is key as well. That's something that women really don't eat enough of. So really trying to make sure that you've got protein with every meal. If you eat meat, then that could look like fish or chicken. If you're a vegetarian, then you could get that protein from soya products, etc. So really, like, the Mediterranean style diet is a good place to start, and having food in your house that's nutritious. Don't The easiest thing to do is not to buy all that processed food, and I can appreciate when you've
Yes.
got children at home, it's maybe not so easy, is it? But don't buy lots of that, you know, sugar laden food, have more nutritious food at home. So
Mhm.
you're not tempted, because it's very rare that if you crave something, you actually get in the car and drive to the shop. If you haven't got it in your house, you might crave a chocolate or a biscuit, but it will pass. So
Mhm.
really get, and I have actually on my website, I've got, there's a Mediterranean style diet meal plan there with shopping lists and everything. So I could maybe send you the link to that if your listeners were interested. It's just a good place to get them started, so you can see, what that actually looks like.
Yeah, that would be great because we can put that link in the show notes. Or if they go to your website, do they just type in their email address and then it's down like a downloadable guide for them?
Yeah, it's under my resources page on my website that you'll see. There's many different ebooks you can download, but the Mediterranean one is there. So, but I can send you the exact link to it, so you don't even have to go to.
Perfect. Yes, and I'm as soon as we end this episode, I'm going to download that because that's my one thing right now that I'm really striving to work on is making better food choices. So I do have kids, and we try to minimize the sugary foods that we bring into the house. But on summer break, we get more lax with it. So uh, we've had cookies because then whenever we go see my grandmother, she gives us a pack of Oreo cookies. And so we ran out of Oreo cookies. So my younger last night was like, what do we have? Do we have any sweet treats? I said, no, we don't. And she said, well, can daddy run out to the store after he brings Lily home from camp and get sweet treats? I said, no, he can't. And she was not a happy camper. I said, we're going to go a night without cookies. I think you're going to survive because we really try not to buy them for that very reason. So school's starting in a couple of weeks. So it's like we are going to get back into healthier food choices for the school year. So that's my goal, especially. And right now it's kind of tricky because our kitchen is being remodeled. So we have no functioning kitchen.
Oh gosh, that must be stressful.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So we're grilling a lot and using the microwave. And so, or we're kitchen squatting. So whenever, because my in-laws don't live far. So like we'll go there, cook a few meals on their stove and bring them home so that we can have them as leftovers. So hopefully the kitchen will be done sooner rather than later so I can actually have a functioning food space and that will help. So yeah, so my goal is as soon as the kitchen is done, we're going to go like whole hog back to healthier food choices because I feel the difference when I don't eat as healthy as I normally do.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult, isn't it? Because the what you were saying about the cookies, that if we're used to eating them every day or every other day, your cravings and sugar is so addictive.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into that cycle of craving sugar, it can be difficult to get out of it, but you just basically just have to stop. And once you've stopped eating all those things, and those cravings have passed, you will actually feel much better. But I think, like you say, it's just not having them in the house. That's, especially with children, that's the easiest thing, because if they're not there, because cravings normally after about 20 minutes pass. If you have a craving for sugar, drink a glass of water,
Mm-hmm.
or have a piece of fruit, or have some nuts.
Yes,
Have something else rather than a cookie.
yes, there's a book. It's Jack Canfield's Success Principles, and I've read it 1,000 times. And not so much, but when I was first getting into self help and personal growth, I was obsessed with this book. And one of the success principles, I don't remember what the principle itself is called, but I just remember the story that he shares. There was an older gentleman that he was friends with, and I think he was having his 90th birthday. And they had cake and ice cream for him, and he refused to eat the cake and ice cream. And everybody was trying to pressure him to do so. And he said, no, I only allow myself a sweet treat when there's a full moon. And that was not a day that was a full moon. So he stuck to his guns and he did not eat it. He said, I can save the cake for, 3 days later when the full moon will come. But the full moon is not tonight, so I cannot eat this cake. And people couldn't wrap their brains around that. So I think that's a good thing. It's like he, didn't completely restrict himself. He just said only on this day. And
Perfect. I love
committed to
that.
that. Yeah. So pick your day. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a day that's a full moon, but maybe you just do it on the 15th of every month. You can say, like, it's the 15th, it's my sweet treat day, and I can have one sweet treat. And then that way, you're going to have it, but you just are having it in moderation and not excessively.
Yeah, and you will, because it will make you feel better. you'll want to carry on doing that. I mean, we all have to live, don't we? And food is delicious, and it is okay to eat, sweet things, but in moderation.
Yes. Yes. So this has been, I'm fascinated. I'm like, okay, I'm getting your guide for your Mediterranean diet because I need that in my life. When we don't eat red meat anyway, we eat, chicken, turkey, and then fish. Um, but I need it. I'm very much a visual person and I like checklists and things. So I'm like, oh yes, this is perfect. I need this. So I will be getting that. So thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. If people go to your website and they download your free guide, or they connect with you on social media and they have a question, are you open to emails or direct messages on, Instagram or Facebook or wherever they connect with you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely open. Anyone's got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Emails are fine, or you can get me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on all the platforms, so whatever suits you best. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that your listeners have got. Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you. Because you're such a valuable resource. And I think you are perfect for people to be able to reach out to, because I feel like, don't have a lot of resources when it comes to women's health and menopause and perimenopause. So I'm like, yeah, I have my resource now. So I'm so thankful that you took time to be on One of a Kind You with us today.
Oh, it's lovely talking to you, Kim, and thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. It's such a interesting subject. I could sit here and talk to you for hours.
Yes, same. I'm like, I feel like I have so many more questions. So maybe we will have to do a part two.
We can absolutely do that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So if you found this episode helpful, please feel free to share it with a friend, because the more the merrier. And also, if you would leave a review, I would greatly appreciate it, because I take the time to read all the reviews to ensure that this podcast continues to be a place of support and guidance, and really a one stop resource for all things moms, all things womanhood. Because let's face it, us ladies, we have to stick together, especially as moms and women. So thank you so much for tuning into another episode of One of a Kind You, and I will see you next week.